2018 to session. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just a quick note before you take roll call, Mr. Clerk. Two things that I'd like to call the attention to the public out there. Number one, I'd like to commend the fire and the police department for Sunday's valiant effort of trying to save a home over on Lakeside. We had a major fire over on Oxbow Lake. The people lost their home. It was totally destroyed, but they were able to save the two structures on either side. And had they not been there when they were, there's no doubt in my mind those two other homes would have gone up. So as bad as it was, there was no loss of life, even saved a cat. And you know, they hopefully will rebuild. And the second is I'd like to commend the police department on their efforts when we had the barricaded gunman, in a sense, who fired several rounds into a residential home here in the community. They handled the situation well in conjoint with Oakland County. And I just want to make sure that you guys got those kudos. So with that, Mr. Clerk, I'd like you to do roll call.
Henry Voorhees.
Present.
Mike Powell.
Here.
Scott Ruggles.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Lilly's here. Mr. Cowell.
Here.
Liz Smith.
Looking for approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with no changes.
Motion, Mr. Lilly.
Support.
Support from Mr. Roman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. This time we're going to have public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. If anyone at this time would like to speak, you need to raise your hand, identify yourself, and you got 3 minutes. Do we have any takers at this time? Yes, sir.
Question if the...
You need to state your name.
Sure. Tom Nora, 7450 Alpine View Court. Question in regards to the property on Porter with the boats. We heard it may be on the...
It is on tonight's agenda.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay, with that, I will close public comment. Okay, moving on to item 6, consent agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with no changes.
All right. I have a motion. I'm looking for support. Support. Support by Mr. Ruggles. A motion, support.
I'm going to save some discussion issues for my trustee comments.
Very good. Okay, motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 7, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of December 19th, 2017. Looking for a motion or a correction? Mr.
Supervisor, I have a correction on page 3, and I certainly can't blame Amy. It very well may have been me, but on page 3, second paragraph, 5th line down, the first the sentence in that line starts, in the library meeting of February 27. It was really September 27. So whether I hiccup during that time or what, that really needs to be changed to September 27th, 2017.
Very good. Duly noted. You got that, Mr.
I'll
Lilly?
amend my, oh, I'm sorry, I never made the motion.
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, I move the approval of the minutes as corrected.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes. And support. Support from Mr. Roman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item 8, resolutions. Resolution number 18-001 is to confirm the reassessment role for this SAD residential refuse removal, which is our contract. And what this does, just allows us to add the new folks that have moved into our community to the role. And we, in order to amend it, we have to pass a resolution every year to add those additional customers. And that's pretty much it for right now on that end of it. Our contract runs through 2020, and after that point, then we will be reviewing that. Any questions from the board? Mr. Roman.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 18-001
confirming the special reassessment role for the garbage pickup.
I have a motion from Mr. Roman, looking for support. Support from Andrea Voorhees. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on, item 9, new business. 9A, request to hire social media archive company. Chief?
That's quick. It's like 7:04. Pretty good. In talking with Kathy Drosser, she went to a class and she brought back some information about social media and the necessity to archive that information for basically for FOIA purposes. As you all know, our Facebook page is pretty successful. We have over 5,300 participants. And just for instance, we put a picture of a individual who was a suspect in a credit card fraud that happened. It happened to one of our residents, and they went to Lake Orion to several businesses out there and used the credit card information. We put that on social media and asked for the public's help, and it reached to date 187,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And it was shared 3,400 times. So it's an effective tool for us, not only to for purposes to say, hey, this is what we've done. Look at the stuff that we've done in the community, but also to help us catch the bad guys. So it's imperative that we keep this going, but it's also imperative that we capture the information that's put on, whether it be comments or the information that we put on, so we can capture that in case someone wants to FOIA that information. And in essence, we need it. So I presented the paperwork to you, and I'm asking for to allow me to hire Archive Social. They are more expensive than Smarsh, but they are more adept to government agencies and they use Detroit Police Department. I believe they use Waterford and Southfield, so they're in the area already. Smarsh is not, and Brawley is just the same type of company as Archive Social, but they're just more expensive.
Okay. It's my understanding, Chief, that this will allow us up to have 10 accounts. You care to explain that?
Yes, so each social media account, the police department has 2 accounts. We have a Twitter account and a Facebook account. And I know Parks and Recs has an account, and I believe you're starting an account if you don't have it up and going already for the township. So those are the accounts that we have, and we may add more to Instagram. There's some other social media accounts that we may add on to our to Facebook and to Twitter. So those 10 accounts, there'll be more than enough to keep us going for
Township, pretty much township-wide?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And I think it was brought up to me that that retention of these types of records is very important for a variety of different reasons, and in particular, any possible legal.
And I'll give you another for instance. Every so often, we had one when we first started putting suspects on Facebook. We had an individual who said, "I know who it is," and then 5 minutes later was gone. Because they can delete their own information. They felt guilty because it may have been a friend of theirs, but it was gone. Luckily enough, we snapped a picture of the screen, so we saved that information. We got to apprehend the suspect, and it's for that reason as well. It's not just for FOIA; it can help us out as well.
There's a lot of pluses to it.
Yep.
It's the new technological era, that threshold that we've all crossed, that our 12, 13, 14-year-old kids or grandchildren know 5 times more than we probably ever will, myself included. So it is another dimension of technology that, as the evolution goes, it's going to be a necessary layer. So, yes, Mr. Powell.
Chief, you brought up a good point. How often do they actually take that snapshot picture?
Every additional post, they take a snapshot.
So it's an instantaneous shot or screenshot of that post?
Within, yes, almost instantaneously, yes.
And how far back does it go, archival? Does it go back to the beginning of social media that we started, or just like a certain point?
It will capture everything that is on there when we hire the company. So everything that's on there right now, they'll capture.
Okay.
And then moving forward, they'll capture
Right.
everything, even if someone deletes it, it'll still be captured.
Now, does that mean that you'll be able to eliminate your hard drive files, because it'll always be on the cloud, you'll be able to go to it? You won't have to take up our hard drive to store all that?
This is not on the hard drive, this is up in the cloud. So they capture it from the cloud and capture it and put it on their hard drive.
But right now, it's taking up room on the police department's hard drive.
No, it's not. It's not. Facebook has their own
Oh,
archive.
okay. All
And
right.
this will just, if we want to do this ourselves, it would take up a lot of our, if we wanted to implement this ourselves at the police department, it would take up a lot of our hard drive, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, there's going to be a contract that lays all that out, though,
Right.
right? Because this is just the quote.
Yep. Yes, there is.
You'll bring that in for review.
Yes, sir.
Any other board members with a question?
Well, do you want him to bring the contract back to the board or authorize the supervisor to sign it
Yeah,
after we
absolutely.
review it? That's probably going to be better than you.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Roman.
Make a motion to approve hiring Archive Social to do the work for police department and also to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract. And in the motion, not to spend more than $200 a month on the service.
I have a motion, looking for support. Support from Mr. Ruggles, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Chief, I look forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
We have 9B, fireworks permit for White Lake Citizens League. Go ahead.
I'll just speak to it briefly. The White Lake Citizens League has made an application for fireworks permit for the date of February 3rd, 2018. All of the information has been obtained and approval has been given by the fire marshal. I would like to just let the board know that in addition to the fireworks application, we did ask the Citizens League to file a public show and exhibition permit application. And what the permit application did was really just let us know the information, when the event would occur, who was going to be involved in whatever. The committee did meet and we made a determination that was more of a private party on behalf of the Citizens League, that we would not felt that the actual public show permit was a necessity. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that we did meet and look at the information and go over that. So
Yep, that was good. Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the fireworks permit for the White Lake Citizens League for February 3rd, 2018.
And I'll support that with a comment. No, that's a really cool activity. I'm a member of the White Lake Citizens League, and it was really cool walking down on White Lake in the middle of February, standing in the middle of a frozen lake, watching fireworks come up. It was just really. And then we walked home to our nice warm house. But it's also, in conjunction with the White Lake Inn. So we went there for dinner, warmed up, and walked out. Yeah, no, it's really cool. It just seems weird to see fireworks because we normally see them in July over White Lake. Like I said, to walk out in the middle of the lake, where it was kind of virgin water at that time of the year. So, cool event if anyone's around that weekend.
And where that is scheduled for February 3rd,
Thank you.
okay? Just so everybody knows, mark that down, fireworks.
Is that associated with any township event?
Nope.
Nope.
No,
They
that's
just-
like just it's the association puts
Yep.
this on, and they just came to us for the permit, which is required. And then the other permit, we just decided because it wasn't
Sure.
not a public event in the sense of
Right.
the way the ordinance is determined. So, we have motion, we have support, all in favor?
No support.
Oh, I beg your
No, I
pardon.
supported with
I
comment.
thought Andrea supported it, yeah. Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on. Item 9C, request for legal action for ordinance violation at 1535 Porter Road. Okay, counsel?
This is a situation where the property owner has been storing boats. I know that we've had discussions with him, and he's indicated that he had this business, but looking at aerial photographs, he's certainly exceeded the scope exponentially. At this point, we have reviewed our ordinances, and we have determined that he is in violation of township ordinances. And so we do suggest the township board move forward with enforcement action by way of litigation. And I think the supervisor is requesting authorization for the township attorney to initiate litigation. I will note the memo that you originally received in your packet has been updated. There was a typo in it where it referenced the wrong address. To be clear, this is the boat storage, 1535 Porter Road.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Supervisor, we did have somebody that wanted to say something after the board gets.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that will. Mr. Clerk?
Rick, as I understand it, in order for us to enter into some type of negotiation, that we need to file some type of court action in order to proceed to try to come to some resolution of the issue.
Well, I mean, certainly you can enter into any sort of private agreement with a property owner. However, if in fact you're going to deviate from your ordinance, yeah, litigation is required.
I would have to say, over the long period of time that I've been here, there's a lot of township properties that have existed for quite some time, over time, that have never really been documented as a non-conforming property. And I would like to see that at least there's an opportunity to look at it from a perspective of some type of negotiation, possibly to clear up the nonconformity rather than just a hard approach with the issue. So I just
Well, certainly every case should be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and I will definitely be in contact with the township board as the case proceeds.
Very good.
So,
Miss Smith.
following up on that, Mr. Lilly, I'd kind of like to know what the township has done in negotiation up until this point with this resident. What has transpired before? So I'm not in.
Well, the purpose of the meeting, really, a lot of times people don't understand when legal nonconforming uses apply and when they don't. And so really what we try to do before we actually take legal action is to sit down with the property owner to make sure they understand why we're moving forward. This is what the ordinance says, this is what's allowed, and this is what you're doing. And that was really the point of the discussion with the property owner that we've had leading up to this point. And it's not, the conclusion was it was not going to be brought into compliance anytime soon. And so the only remedy at this point would be to take
File action.
legal action.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I'm certainly not in the habit of putting any residents out of business or using taxpayer dollars for litigation if we can avoid that. So I just want to make sure we've reached out to him and we've, explored all options first.
No,
Yeah.
we have gone down that road. So, okay, a motion and support, did I get the motion yet? Or did I?
We want to listen to the
Oh,
audience.
yeah, well, we can, I beg your pardon. Anyone care to speak on this subject matter?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few words.
Stand up, identify yourself.
Should they come up and use the mic because we're on
Yeah,
TV?
you should probably do that, because I don't think he can get you on the,
Do you want to time it, or?
you got 3 minutes, we'll try to, can you do it in 3 minutes?
Don't let that scare you,
Well, I saw the Bible coming out
I know,
there,
I
so I
thought.
wanted to make sure.
Hi, my name's Randall Smith. I live at 7430 Alpine View Drive. It's a subdivision that butts up against the property where these boats are stored. Just want to say a few things. Moved there in 2003. And it is a very nice subdivision. And the back of my property didn't have boats stored in it. Now I can tell you, on that property, had there been boats there, I wouldn't have moved there because I didn't realize that it was commercial property. But I don't believe it is commercial property, is what I'm being told now. But anyways, you're absolutely right. I do believe there was some boats that was stored there, but nothing like what's happened probably about 5 years ago. As a matter of fact, there was a barn or a building there, and I believe it did get damaged, but it was knocked down, and they filled that up, knocked down a bunch of areas, leveled it out, and started storing boats. So anyways,
Yeah,
I'd like to show some pictures.
You can. We're more than happy to show the board. Just to let you know, we've really exhaustively examined the aerials.
Well,
and
that's my
shown.
backyard. I'd like you to take a
Oh,
look
okay,
at my
view from your
backyard,
yard.
What my picture's view is, okay? And very nice subdivision again. And the only problem is every spring now, I get to hear motors buzzing when they get ready to pull them out of being winterized. And a little bit in the fall, it's very noisy. And the other thing is I'm concerned about is when I go to sell the house, this may cost me maybe $10,000-$20,000, because I can tell you I wouldn't be buying in there, moving next to a business. The other thing is that now that I'm retired, I get to hear a lot of foul language come out of there. And I keep my grandchildren pretty much out of the backyard because I'm tired of all the F-bombs. So when you talk about this nice guy, okay, that we don't want to hurt or go into any litigation again, I do want you to know that this has no concern for the neighbors, okay? And I've been, my wife has called up here in the office before, and basically it's been a long, long time. I'm just really happy to hear that there's an interest in doing something.
Right.
But it has gotten out of control,
Right.
okay?
Thank you, Randall.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
Just real quick, I could probably, I'll talk loud, because real quick. I'm Tom Norick, 7450 Alpine View Court, White Lake, Michigan. I'm also in the same subdivision. We had a subdivision meeting within the last 2 months. It was unanimous within our subdivision, the concern with that property and the property values of our subdivision. Once again, we have a community. As Randy said, I moved here in 1997. I moved here in the summer. No boats. And slowly 1 boat, 2 boats, 5 boats. Now there's got to be 150, 200 boats within that property. Eyesore driving down Porter Road. I don't think it's good for our community, and especially not good for a subdivision that backs up to that. So as I'm an officer of the Alpine Estates subdivision, and I come representing this subdivision requesting action as well.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone else on that subject?
No, I just want to clarify my comment to Mr. Smith. I just hope that we talk to all of our residents first and give everybody the same, amount of respect, and that we tried to negotiate or work it out before we would take any resident to court. That's all I'm saying. I would want to give you the same courtesy that we tried everything we possibly could first.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing your pictures. I appreciate that.
Randall and Tom, please, before you leave this evening, can you make sure that we have your contact information?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So, all right, thank you very much. Okay.
Supervisor, if I could just ask
Mr.
2
Powell.
questions, please?
Sure.
Maybe Sean could help me. What size is the parcel the boats are being held on, and what's the zoning of that parcel?
I believe it's zoned suburban farms, and I believe it's roughly a 5-acre parcel.
Okay, thank you. That's good enough, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, other questions from the board? Okay. Looking for a motion to,
Make a motion to authorize the township attorney to proceed with litigation and I guess bring some type of recommendation back to the board.
okay.
Support.
Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you very much. Item 9D, discussion on medical marijuana facilities licensing act, MMFLA 281 of 2016. That's a smoking subject, I'll tell you right there.
Literally, and
Literally.
figuratively.
Unless you put it in brownies, you mean.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Supervisor, we have roughly 5 school districts in White Lake Township, and we have a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And I strongly believe that for medical purposes, there are people that are in a great amount of need because of pain and whatever, that they have access to marijuana. I don't believe that the state's going about it in the right way. I think if it's going to be used for medical purposes, it should be done through a pharmacy or some type of other way. But I'm absolutely opposed to moving forward to consider the several options that are available to the township for either the growing, manufacturing, or whatever of marijuana in White Lake.
I mean, you don't want to be an inspector? Go out there and inspect the facility?
Like I say, I believe in it for medical purposes, but with the school district's amount of kids, and I can say I live on Farnsworth, across kitty corner from the Dublin Elementary School, and we even had one of our residents growing marijuana in one of our houses, adjacent neighbors. So I feel there's other locations that are more suitable for these type of operations in White Lake Township.
Understand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Powell, I know you want to say something. So.
Yes, when this first came up, the board struggled with it, and we had a lot of attorneys' opinions, and the board at that time voted to just abide by state law. But the individuals that were licensed to grow it, and those individuals out of their home, but no commercial setup, nothing like that. And this was a number of years ago.
So when you're talking about when the Medical Marijuana Act was initially adopted,
That
not
is
the
correct.
Licensing Facilities Act.
That is correct. But we made a decision back then that as a township, we were not going to allow the setup of commercial sales, and we just didn't feel it was proper at that time anyway to allow the public and mostly the kids to see that that was a viable drug to be able to walk into a building and essentially buy it. With the new laws that are coming out, and I have no doubt that the state will probably join a number of the other states and allow for recreational use, that'll be a whole different issue that we'll probably have to deal with here in the near future. But right now, I agree with Terry. I'd just as soon it be private for those people that need it and not go public.
Thank you. Mr. Roman?
Well, I agree with Terry and Mike, and also my other concern is police enforcement of all those laws. I don't want to put the burden on our police department to have to enforce laws that really haven't even been tested yet in the legal system. So, as far as those people that need medical marijuana, I absolutely support it, but they can get it in neighboring communities.
Very good.
Are there other options that we have then to have to do this? Because I agree. I think I'm good with it for the medical end of it. Are there options though?
Well, the options that my understanding that the municipalities have is that there's, 4 licenses?
5.
5 licenses. One is growth, one is processing, one is delivery, one is delivery and transportation, inspection, quality inspection, and then the final retail or just a dispensary. That's the term they use, dispensary. So some communities have adopted to allow everything but the dispensary. Now, what does that mean to the community? What that means to the community is that if an operation comes up in your community, that the local community is allowed to charge them a licensing fee. What's the dollar?
$5,000, not to exceed $5,000 annually to cover your administrative costs, essentially.
Right, and then there's also a tax, I believe. You get a percentage of whatever. So
I think if you opt in, you may share in that. I don't know what the formula is.
So, just so that you guys understand where Sean and I were, why this is just put on preliminary without any supporting documents, is before we invested the time to prepare any legal memorandum explaining to you what your options are, before we work with the planner to prepare any sort of draft ordinance, before Sean puts the time in to look at where it's appropriate, we really wanted to get the temperature of the board. Do you want us to put that time in to do the legwork, to do the research, to prepare the memorandums, to talk to the planning director? So this was really just to gauge your temperature on how far you want us to go before any funds or resources are expended to research the issue and bring back the appropriate information. Now, if it sounds like you all, a few of you have already expressed your feelings about it, that's fine. we just wanted some direction from the board before we put more time or money into it.
Mr. Lilly.
Again, just a clarification is my understanding that, and I think that's kind of what you said, that if we spend all of the time creating ordinances, then the ordinances will permit those type of uses. By the board doing nothing, nothing is permitted to happen without an ordinance in place.
That's correct.
Right.
There are communities, though, that are dotting their I's and crossing their T's twice by actually adopting ordinances opting out, specifically saying we don't want these in our community. The law says you don't need that, but the law is also very new. And so a lot of communities just wanted to have that extra special protection to adopt an ordinance to essentially opt out.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Ruggles.
I wouldn't mind having a little more information on the subject. I mean, not that I'm for it or against it, but I don't have any info to judge anything off of. I'd like to know what some other communities are doing.
Well, we may be able to talk to a few. For example, Orion Township just passed everything but the dispensary, as I mentioned, so there would be a good source of information. I'm sure we could get some data from them.
Well, and your planners, I'm sure, are dealing with this in other communities and drafting ordinances and stuff. And I mean, there are lots of different ways you can draft ordinances by making it, say, a special land use where you can add conditions and regulations. There's lots of things you can do with it. But before we, like I said, before we put the time into it, we really wanted to gauge interest.
MTA would be another resource that I would check with. I mean, again, it's pretty new, but
It may take some time for this to work all the little ends of this out.
And that's the other thing, is like you're not under any time constraint at this point. You can opt in at any point in the future. It's not as if you have to opt in the next month or so. And then, you know, with the feds taking the position that they've taken, you really don't know what's going to happen in the next few months to a year.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, Mr. Paul.
Maybe the attorney can help us a little bit. We're not allowed to preempt state law, correct? Which means the person that needs it can in fact grow it in their house up to a certain point, and other people can in fact grow it for a certain number of patients.
Yeah, the original act, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, is unaffected. This is it's a brand new act dealing with just facilities, licensing of facilities.
Ah, okay, thank you.
which was sort of absent and lacking in the first go round and left communities kind of not sure what
Nobody knew
they
what
were
to do.
supposed to do or
Okay.
what they weren't. So this
Right.
is attempting to close, I don't want to say loop, but it's attempting to address that issue.
Okay.
I think there was a gap of regulation there that was missing, and this is what this attempt to do. And
I think so.
And frankly, from what I've gathered at this point, I think there's still some things that are going to come out as time goes by, because this is obviously such a new subject to so many communities.
The act requires administrative rules be developed that haven't been developed yet by the administrative agency tasked with it.
Yeah, we'll take a little bit of public comment. Yes?
I had a
Well,
question.
you're in,
Oh, sorry. April Pachmara, 9857 Elizabeth Lake Road. Was wondering, what is the potential for tax revenue? I mean, this could, we see what's happening in Colorado and the states. I mean, they're more recreational, but how much money can we gain as a township in tax revenue?
It's difficult to say. The licensings, I believe, are $5,000. The township, I believe, has the ability to determine how many licenses are issued in the license process. I don't know if the cost is going to be a gain to the community in the sense of what's it going to cost us in extra policing? What's it going to cost us in extra fire when these facilities have a problem? And they historically do. There was just a gentleman here the other day that was at one of these unlicensed dispensaries, but a dispensary nonetheless, and he was murdered at the dispensary. And this was, in somewhere in Detroit. It was on the news. But I just don't have this warm, fuzzy feeling that this is something that's good for this community. I firmly believe that there is a medicinal purpose to this. I've done some reading, and marijuana and hemp are similar but different. Hemp is a very similar looking plant that people heard about, but it doesn't have the THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol level that marijuana has. And the marijuana now has gotten so refined from what it was in 1968, 1965. Today it's gone to high test turbocharged, okay? And the problem with that is that it's not something I don't think that I'd want to experiment with, okay? Because you don't know what the end result is. But however, it's been proven, it's been documented, there's all kinds of research done. Israel's the leading country in the world that is the only government funded program that actually does research on the medical benefits of it. And it's been astounding what the medical benefits, and in particular for people that have epilepsy and problems like that. I saw a special one time on PBS that was dealing with this one young lady. She was just a little 4-year-old girl, and they had to keep her in a crib with a helmet on because she was having up to 200 seizures a day. I can't even fathom that as a parent. During this whole process, the mother talked to somebody who talked to somebody who talked to somebody and said, hey, she should try to give her this oil under her tongue and see what it does, supposedly does things. Well, they did this process, and at the end of the PBS special, there's this little girl riding a bicycle down the street with her father and hasn't had any seizures. So you can't be ignorant and say that there's nothing to be gained. It's just a question of where the real medical benefit of the product is and the recreational let's get stoned and let's get stupid, of which the chief can elaborate on that at any time, from a professional standpoint. Well, we just had one the other day that did something real goofy, you were telling me. So what does this bring to the table, you know? So I don't know, as a community, as a White Lake, if we're necessarily ready to cross that line and get into that. I'll be happy to, at the different things that we've got coming up with the supervisors, and we're going to have the MTA. I'm sure there's going to be some seminars there in April. I think we should do some more homework on it. But what I'd like to do maybe is maybe get a little motion here that just says no further official action by legal or planning at this time. And that's sort of what I'm looking for right now, because I'm frankly getting tired of fielding the phone calls that I get 3 to 9 phone calls a week from people wanting to know if we're going to be on the marijuana wagon. And I need to tell them something, not that I would just like to be able to tell them something. So this is why I wanted to bring it to the board's attention and see what has to be said. So, yes, dear.
You're looking for a motion? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, I'll get the information from a different way, but I know what you're getting at. I'll do it, but I don't want planning nor yourself to
I will not
extend
do
it.
any work.
I'm not running the meter on you for this.
Nope, I won't
Okay.
do anything.
So, I'm sorry, Liz, please.
I don't have much to say on it because I think it's really preliminary, and I think we need to have a lot more information and a lot more discussions. And I would certainly want to hear from our residents before we made any decision. I'd want to hear from our residents a lot of their take on this coming into our community or not coming into our community. So it was my understanding that no action was required of us tonight, that you just wanted to open up the doors of discussion.
The only action would be that I just don't want to give direction to the town, these individuals to spend time or money on it at this point.
I had a pretty in-depth conversation with Sean on it. How we understood it is status quo is okay, right? We don't need to.
Right. If we
opt
do
in or out.
nothing, we've not opted in.
Right.
You have to opt in or you're out.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's where we are now.
Unless you adopt an ordinance opting in, you're out right now.
Mhm.
No facilities can come into White Lake Township, period.
And
That's my
I had
understanding.
expressed to Liz earlier today that from my standpoint, and you've all brought up good points that I agree with, I would hate for us to be the test case. It's too early. Let other communities who maybe are more daring, we have too much to lose. This is a great place to live, great place to work, great place to raise a family. And I'm not saying that, you know, this would turn everything on its ear, but why do we want to mess with what's working? Let this go where other communities will embrace it and see how it works for them. In a few years, we'll know.
Mr. Roman.
So, Rick, if I'm understanding what you're looking for with a motion that's if we could approve a motion that said we discussed it, and at this point in time, we don't want to move forward with licensing facilities, you can at least give those phone callers a definitive answer.
Correct.
Right?
Mhm.
Council, is there a problem with doing that? No?
No, essentially, you're voicing your position to opt out.
Right, and it can
At
always
this time,
change.
that's correct.
It can always change.
I'll put that in the form of a motion, that at this point in time, our board has decided not to move forward with any of the marijuana licensing facilities under the new Act 281.
I'll support that.
I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Just
Oh,
to, I'm sorry,
yes.
but just to
Go
avoid
ahead.
any confusion when people are looking at minutes, you're opting out at this point.
At this
That's
point,
correct.
yeah.
So maybe the minutes should reflect that, or your motion should reflect that, just to
Got
avoid
it.
any
Got that,
confusion.
Amy?
I understood your motion as no action, not officially opting out.
Well, instead of saying not move forward,
So what is
I'll
your
make
set
it
it
say,
goes
what is
yeah,
your
at
intent?
this point in
Opt
time, we're opting out.
more,
And I'll amend my support for the same way.
okay.
Okay, I have motion, I have support.
Oh, okay.
Further discussion?
I'm sorry, I have to further discuss that. Just to, was that your intent of the motion, is you want to officially opt out?
Yeah,
without
and that way,
any
people that
further
are inquiring, we
information?
can tell them at this point in time, the board has decided to opt out of licensing any type of these new facilities.
Okay, and in the future, say our community for some reason wanted it, we can
Well, we can revisit
explore
it, yes, yeah.
Okay.
This is just to kind of put a lot of this at least to bed for the time being. We do have the option under the law to come back into it.
Okay, I understand.
Should the
Just, I would-
voters, you know, in this township,
I'd like to hear from our community on it.
correct. But for the time being, because what I really don't want, here's what my biggest fear is about this, Liz. My biggest fear is that there are a lot of people that will push the law to the edge, and then they'll even push it, they'll put their toes over the edge even further. If they know that we are not necessarily considering it right now, they may go another community. We could have people come in here and start to set things up in places unbeknown to us in the hopes that, well, we're just going to go ahead and do it because they're just going to, sooner or later, they're going to pass it and approve it anyways. In the meantime, it puts our police in jeopardy, it puts our fire in jeopardy, it puts potential residents in jeopardy. We've had places where they've put them in mobile home trailers and small facilities, and they've burned down and done damage. There's been a myriad of things that have happened. So if at least people have an understanding that at this point in time, at this crux, we're not interested at this point in time.
No,
Things could always change.
I have no problem with that. Just what I was hearing is I thought inaction.
No.
But
Well,
you want to take, it's
this,
different.
I'd like to
It
come
is
up.
different.
Yeah, well, since obviously the opinion of the board is much stronger than I anticipated, then there's no reason not to take action. Okay?
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
My name is, Dan Garber, 8380 Jamestown Drive. Just listening to about this medical marijuana, I think there's some great uses for that. But what scares the living daylights out of me is that the toes over the line. You know, I've heard about different stories and everything else. My youngest son went to school all the way through middle school, and his best friend down the street, back when we lived in Waterford, died of an overdose of heroin. There was an epidemic going on. It's nonstop, and we better be really careful about bringing in any other type of recreational or any. I mean, it just explodes, and it scares the living daylights out of me. So, if you want a community opinion and so forth, talk to the parents or have children that they're looking at that don't necessarily know any better. Better be really careful before we go in that particular direction. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Anyone else? Up right in the red. Yes, sir.
John Early, 5925 Pine Ridge Court, White Lake. You mentioned, Mr. Supervisor, that you had some calls. Were they customers, potential customers?
These are people that I've called wanting to know the township's position as to what facility we are going to allow within the township.
What were they, vendors or customers?
These are people that are going to try to set up shop.
So I asked that same question, and I was told some of the calls are lobbyists, and some are simply students trying to do reports, and some are interested in dispensaries. So
I have been
think it's
approached by, it's difficult to, pardon the pun, weed them all out. But nonetheless, the level of interest, it would just be nice to be able to have a standard answer.
Yes.
I had two, I had two professional business people come to me and ask me specifically whether White Lake Township would allow them to set up a large growing facilities here in White Lake. And so that's why I'd like to take an official stand.
I've had people approach me to ask what what White Lake was doing as far as dispensaries are concerned.
So there we go.
We get calls regularly.
Yes,
as
sir.
well.
So we're talking about dispensaries, the end product, the end.
Well, I think, well, there, like, again, there's those 5 licensures, but
But what the inquiries seem to be about is
they're
dispensaries.
I get it from
Growing.
the growers, I get it from dispensary people, and I don't want to use the word assume, but one would assume that if you have growing and you have dispensing, the other 3 are going to come along. Okay.
I'm buying houses and flipping them. It's kind of a once a year. Last year, we looked at 10 houses in White Lake and Commerce on the low end, under $100,000. And there must have been out of 10, 3 to 4 of them that were official grow houses that, you know, they're out at the end of the street somewhere. The electrical boxes are all supercharged. Their windows are painted or they've got shades drawn. And what they do is they supercharge the electric to put the lights in, and then they punch holes in the walls and run the heat ducts all over, and they last about a year, year and a half until the mold gets so bad that they don't want to use them anymore. They can't use them anymore. And these houses are they're in our community. They're close by. And it's here. This isn't cocktail trivia. This is something that's in our community now. And I don't like seeing that. I don't like seeing our buildings going downhill and what it does to the neighbors and everybody. You know, the neighbors kind of know about it, but they don't want to rat on them, or they don't. And these houses are basically they're knocker downers.
Thank you very much. The only thing that at some point what we could do a little further down the line, I'd still like to hold this action here to have our official, and at some point, you know, Liz, we may do a survey or something a little further down the line. I'd really like to see where this law plays out and how it all plays out over a period of time. And I would ask the chief that if you and your department would keep an ear to the rail on adjacent communities and the issues that you're going to be seeing going on, and from time to time update myself and this board on this particular subject matter, because again, this is, you know, it's an important issue.
So there's a state registry we can all go on. It's public knowledge that you can look up to see which communities have officially opted in or officially opted out. Only Lyon Township has opted out. I believe Waterford's opted out, and the other closer communities I think are, and don't quote me because I think I want to say Holly and Fenton have taken action one way or the other, but not many communities around us has taken action one way or the other. But if anyone's interested, it's there's a state registry that you can look it up.
I think a lot of the communities are recognizing that it's so new,
Right.
and with the federal government taking the position it's taken, that people are just kind of holding off since there's no time requirement to do something today.
Yes,
I have
sir.
a question.
Your name and
Yeah, pardon?
your name for the record.
Oh, Shelley Kowalski, 7371 Ellen Grove, White Lake. curious. If you're back a little bit, you were saying there's gonna be people that are gonna step their toes over and start things, okay? What do we do if the police go in or called in by somebody? What are police allowed to do, and what do you do if people do this?
Well, if we go into a facility that has over the number of plants that are allowed by an individual or a caretaker, and they exceed it, we can raid them and shut them down. Okay?
Well, I'm just curious what you do, because I don't know.
Chief?
I've been involved.
That's a
with-
chief question.
Okay.
Spot on, that's what happens.
Okay, there you go.
Right now, nobody is allowed to open a facility under the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act unless the township adopts an ordinance.
I have a lot of mixed emotions. I'm a lot older than some of the people in here, and for 17 years worked in an alternative education program. And we dealt with it all the time. And although they found over the years, I'm a nurse also, found over the years that they can do a lot with it, but marijuana affects a lot of people in many different ways.
Right. Well, that's one thing I don't necessarily want to see anything on the negative, and again, it's too new, and that's why I'd like to see us take at least the thought process at this point in time. Jean-Luc?
Jean-Philippe Loewe, 247 Rosario Lane. I find it interesting what the gentleman was saying, because before he said it, I was thinking, well, that probably people might already grow it, and nobody knows about it in very uncontrolled conditions. And that might be a big danger because of it. And then there is that swear word called regulation. Maybe, and I understand the dilemma to figure it out is maybe some control or some conditions, certain areas. Like you cannot put a certain manufacturing, you have certain fire marshal coming through, certain safety conditions, certain requirements that you have to fulfill. So it might be interesting to learn from other communities what kind of conditions did they put in. Certain building materials, certain safety requirements they have to put in, to frame that, to make it maybe a little bit more safe and less haphazard. It's just my concern.
Okay. Chief?
Just want to make clear, if you have one, doesn't mean you're not going to have the other. If you have both laws, you're going to have both the industry and the personal in the houses. It's not one or the other. It's going to be both.
Right. Well, anybody doing anything right now without any of this activity under the law is totally illegal right now. So.
Your point is well taken, but I don't think that adopting this law and allowing facilities and requiring a $5,000 annual permit is going to stop people from doing it illegally without us knowing about it. I mean, but a lot of times there are negative effects, as you've indicated, with the lights. Oftentimes there's noise with the heat that's required. There's odors. So the township is alerted to illegal operations on a regular basis, and we do take action when we're alerted to it. Obviously, if we're not alerted to it, it happens.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Mr. Lilly.
One more comment. I wanted to support what you had said earlier about the people that are calling the township, asking about the growing facilities, whatever. These people are not on the phone. The answer they want to hear is no. Otherwise, they're pushing the envelope, as you had indicated, to try to find out, well, if there's a possibility, then where are the vacant buildings in White Lake, and where is this, and where very time-consuming, a waste of planning time and that. So I just wanted to mention that in your support, that these people need to be told at the present time definitively no, that the board is not going to support the action.
Certainly, and I appreciate the comment about the money. There's going to be the estimate is a $6 billion a year industry. That's a B, $6 billion. With that kind of money out there, there's going to be major pressure on this township to change these rules, and until it's time, I highly suggest we hold back from it.
Very good. Any other comments from the public? Okay. We have a motion, and we have support.
Motion support.
Yes. Motion from Mike and Mike.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to trustee comments. Andrea Voorhees.
Pardon me, I'm reading this from my cell phone in front of me, so I have to look down. I forgot to bring the printed out version. The White Lake Historical Society invites you to tell them a story. A small group of White Lake Historical Society members have formed a committee that is in the process of gathering stories and information on the members of the White Lake Police Department, fire departments, and their military veterans, both present and past. In November of 2017, 150 plus letters were sent to the White Lake Township military veterans inviting them to share their information for a photo for inclusion in the book. We are reaching out to families of the deceased veterans as well. We are working with the police and the fire department and reaching out to their families for historical information and photos. If you'd like to know more about this project, submit information, or become a sponsor, you may contact the White Lake Historical Society. Call Barb Allison, which I have her phone number. Their tentative printing date is late summer of 2018. And there's a committee of 5, which I see one of them in our audience tonight, which is Greg Baroni. So thank you. If you want any information and be wanting a part of this book that the Historical Society is wanting to publish, please let me know. I'm also calling volunteers of White Lake Township. White Lake Township has Meals on Wheels. Our church, which my parents help organize in regards to like the drivers, they're 82 and 87. So if you're retired, you guys can do it. I mentioned Mr. Smith. He's retired. It's a good project for you. What they do is once a week, my parents organize 10 drivers to deliver Meals on Wheels to about 30 people in White Lake Township. It takes about 2 to 3 hours. They meet at Dublin Community Center. And if I can do it on my paid time off from my work, because my company closes down and I work for a nonprofit, with my sister from Portage, my 82-year-old mom, and my 14 and 16-year-old niece on my time, then I expect everyone in this audience to find time. And that's my time. I'm not working, so I take the time. Kind of helps. I get a little bit of peer pressure from my parents to help them. But at the same time, it was snowing in December when we went out. So if anyone has time, like 2 hours once a month, please contact me or the Dublin Community Center. I'm sure they could hook you up with a coordinator. I'm drawing a blank on the woman's name at Dublin, but I'm sure they could forward. Kathy Gourrier is the coordinator there. I'm sure she could forward the information to the person that could use more volunteers. If not, contact me and I can forward the information. And we actually have a retired person that's worked for White Lake Township for about 10 to 15 years that does it pretty regularly for us and knows White Lake. And it's pretty easy. And I'm all set. But they need volunteers.
I do have one question to ask you. The Historical Society is putting that book together, looking for financial sponsors. You have the cost of what?
No, I don't have that kind of stuff.
Greg?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
All right.
But any donation is acceptable.
Okay. All right, because there's different levels of sponsorship.
Different levels of sponsorship,
Okay.
but I don't have that information.
Okay, all right, very good. Ms. Smith?
Okay, be pretty brief. I hope everybody had a happy holiday season and safe New Year's. It's the start of a new year, and we have a lot going for us here in White Lake. So I hope to start afresh and start positive in White Lake. And just a quick library update is their regular monthly board meeting is Wednesday, January 24th at 6:45, lower level. What they have coming up for them is mini golf to think about. It's April 22nd, and that's their largest fundraiser if anyone's interested in sponsorship or helping the event itself. And I just want to give out my thoughts to the terrible house fire over the weekend on Oxbow Lake here in White Lake. And that's about it.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggles?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention something I should have earlier. Off the agenda, there were a couple appointments to the Planning Commission. Rhonda Grubb and Mark Fine have been reappointed for another 3 years, so I don't see them here, but I look forward to working with them for another
Very good. Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The first thing I'd like to say that when I come into this township and deal with all of the departments, I'm always very impressed and very proud of the professionalism here in the township in all the departments, and that's kind of a backhanded compliment of you and your leadership as well, Mr. Supervisor. So I wanted to make sure the staff knows how much we appreciate their work here. And then a person that sometimes gets left out, Mr. Doug Utter, who cleans this facility, and it just seems like he's always on top of things and makes sure the board has everything they need, and so I wanted to appreciate him as well. And I wanted to make a couple comments on the department reports, much like what Mr. Ruggles did. The police department for the year last year, they responded to, they received over 26,000 calls. That's 72 calls per day, and they dispatched 32 calls per day over last year. And that's a tremendous amount of work by our police department, and I wanted to thank them. The fire department responded to 2,794, or 7.5 calls per day, and that's a tremendous amount of work for our departments here locally. I also wanted to let the community development director or Sean know that I think it would be a great idea for this township board and the planning commission to sit down and have a joint meeting on the campus study or the downtown study that was done. I obviously have some things I'd like to share on that, and it would be very wise, I think, for the two boards to get together. And remember, we paid some money for that, and that is going to be invaluable for us and for the planning of this township. And I think the planning commission needs some guidance from this board as to how they might modify the zoning ordinance and the master plan. And I also couldn't help but notice that the building department really picked up this year. There were so many years when you go with 5 building permits an entire year, and they ended up picking up about 3.5 building permits per day last year, and that's a tremendous amount of work. And I did mention to the supervisor, chief, and I know the fire department's out here, but I think it would be awesome if our police chief and fire chief were to give the board a summary of last year. It'd be really nice to know how their perception of the township has been over the last year and what we might do to improve the township a little bit from their perspective. I also wanted to point out to my colleagues here on the board that there are a large number of very sensitive areas in the township around lakes, wetlands, and one of the things that I do in my office is we design engineered septic systems, and we get calls daily. We probably design 200 septic systems a year here in Oakland County, and last year we did 8 engineered septic systems in White Lake Township. 7 of those were required to have pre-treatment involved, and so we're talking about homes that are close enough to a sanitary sewer, and they had to pay $30,000 to $35,000 to be able to put engineered septic systems in their property, and that required not only a change of their yard, they had to be raised way up, but they had to pay for an operator's fee, $90 every year for an operator's fee. The homeowner has to pick that up, and they have to pay approximately $450 a year to have an expert come in and maintain that pre-treatment system in that septic field. Now, the health department changed their laws back in November of 2016. And so this board could really make a major statement, not only to our residents, but also to the county health department, if we were to take the step and say we'd like to start extending sanitary sewers into these marginal areas. People could expand their house. They could tear down old homes and put new ones up. All of those things are prohibited by the county health department, and our residents could greatly improve their homes if we did something like that. So that being said, I thank my board.
Thank you, very
Mr.
good.
Supervisor, I didn't hear it being mentioned, but I just want to let the residents know that the inform report is done, and that's what Mr.
Yes.
Powell is referring to. So this was the consulting report, and if anyone would like to see it, I can share it with you after the meeting, but that's what we're talking about, is the report is done.
And that will be added to the website this week.
Correct.
I wanted to make sure you had it and didn't have any questions or issues before we
Right.
put it out there.
Mr. Lilly.
I'd just like to thank Amy for everything she does. I forgot to mention that at the last meeting. Thank my staff for everything that they do. I know lately I've had to take some time off with a leg issue and kind of put the pressure on them a little bit to be by themselves, but I want to let them know that I do appreciate that. I had an opportunity, like most of us, to visit our iron infiltration plant here 2 months ago, and want to let you know that I'm really impressed with the Aaron and his performance that he's done and the obligations and that he's taken on since he's been here as director. So I'm going to probably at the next meeting make some recommendations on Aaron's behalf. So just if anybody would like to talk a little further about that, I'd be more than happy to discuss it with you. The other item, if you get a chance to come to the office, we now have some new shelving in there that our new election equipment is placed, and it's pretty crowded in there. And also want to bring back some recommendations to the board of how maybe we can rearrange things a little bit, be a little more effective until such time as we can really make a financial commitment to relocate to other facilities. So I just want to make you aware of that, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
I just want to remind our community, winter taxes are due and payable without penalty through February 14th. And if you go beyond March 1st, they get turned over to the county delinquent, so you want to make sure you get those paid as soon as possible. That's all I had.
That's it? Okay. Well, and going back to my first comments and commending both the fire department and the police department, I want to remind residents that we're going to be seeing some millage requests for renewal for these services in our community. And I can't begin to tell you how important it is to have these guardians of our community. They're the ones that make it livable for us. When it was snowing like heck the other day and everything, that people were sliding all over the place, those trucks were still rolling down the road. I was watching them take off, and police cars are doing their thing, and officers are out there with snow blowing all over them. They're doing traffic stops and trying to aid and render assistance when they can. One of the things that never ceases to amaze me about the police department is that last year we did over 700 lockout assists, I think it was.
It averages about 700 a year.
Yeah, 700 people locked their keys in their car.
Wow.
So, and they didn't have to call AAA. It's a service that, frankly, most communities don't do, and it's just that little added extra. And the one benefit that I think on that has, and it has a secondary benefit, it helps build those relationships in the community, which has allowed policing to be more effective. And so every time that the police and or fire can get out there and commingle with the community, I think people really understand the value of it. It's very important. So again, we have to keep in mind, these things that when it comes time. I'd also like to thank all the adjacent communities that showed support and sent their tankers. I believe Commerce was there, Commerce was there, Highland I think was there, Waterford was there, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple others, but I'll tell you what, it was pretty darn impressive. I was on scene in the morning, and it was colder than Billy be, you know what, and we had a quarter mile of hose that we had to thaw or I said those guys had to thaw out at the end of that, and I know that was a task. So my hat goes off to them. Also, just a little note of interest, I did receive a letter from Joe Fennell, the treasurer of the library, who was laying out some groundwork for a repayment policy program back to the funds that have been reimbursed to the township. It's not anything that I could put together as quickly to get to this board meeting for the board to review, but I suspect we'll have something to look at next month. So with that, I will say thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being involved. Have a good evening, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn?
Support.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is adjourned.